So you have this idea and you think, this could be my next great story. So you hop on Google and you search, what have famous authors done to complete their novels? And you'll probably find two really popular ways of getting a book put together. Those are called gardeners and architects. There's a bit of a dichotomy on how we approach writing stories. On the gardener side, you're going to see names like Patrick Rothfuss, George R.R. Martin, Margaret Atwood, Ursula K. Le Guin. So all these authors, they are writing and seeing where it takes them. They don't really have an idea of where it's going. Oftentimes they just begin with a very base idea, but then they just let the story take them. I wanted to pull a cool Ray Bradbury quote. He says, "The faster you blurt, the more honest you are." And he also says, "Jump and you will find out how to unfold your wings as you fall." When you discovery write, you end up finding beautiful things that you just never thought of in terms of your budding idea that you just never anticipated. But that's not to say it's perfect. So I want to jump to the other one, the architect style. Jesse, you have more familiarity with architects. What is your experience with it, and what do you think about both?
Architects, as you mentioned, are also called outliners or plotters. An architect or an outliner is exactly what it sounds like. They're doing all of their planning and outlining, character descriptions, dossiers, all that kind of stuff, even before they put pen to paper. Brandon Sanderson is one, Dan Brown, Agatha Christie, Suzanne Collins, and it's more of a spectrum than I think we like to admit. Like Suzanne Collins will have a loose outline of basic structures they want to do, and then between those points on the outline, they'll basically discovery write between them. And then there's someone like Orson Scott Card who is almost doing an outline point for every single paragraph in his novel. So there's everything in between.
I think you might start out saying, okay, I'm going to be one or the other and just try that. But realistically, yeah, you're going to hit a little bit of both. In terms of the pros for being a gardener, the first one is spontaneity. This is a great pro because it makes you excited to write. You basically are so thrilled to see what is going to happen next, and you have no idea. It's a little scary at first because you're almost going at this thinking, I'm going to come up with nothing, but then it ends up working out really well. If you're going to be writing, you do have creativity within you, so trust that. The second one would be stronger characters. Essentially, you are basing a lot of your narrative around the character choice and the natural consequences that come from it. And so you end up hitting these destinations that you didn't necessarily anticipate. You're kind of putting yourself in the character's place and you're exploring the world that they're in and seeing what happens next. The third thing is strong themes. The character choices that I mentioned, the themes come out more organically when they make these choices. The fourth thing is short works thrive. Short works are actually really good for discovery writing because it's much easier to discover where this is going or kind of the world that you're going to inhabit without juggling all these different plot lines or different items that are in the world. Those are the pros for Gardener. Jesse, hit me with the architect pros.
These first few are probably very easy to see, but the first pro is you have very clean structure and almost no wasted time. And in this, you have less drafts. This is part of the reason that things like film use this outlining structure so much. And in part of this, it's also easier to work with other people. Many people that co-write stories are forced to outline because outlining allows people to make changes and revisions before you waste a lot of time putting like 40,000 words on the page. Another good benefit is complexity is way easier. You can have 5, 6 POVs, and it's not as hard as it is for the discovery writer because you're figuring out all of the ways that these things intertwine on the front end. Now, again, this is not impossible. George R.R. Martin is a famous discovery writer, and he has a huge amount of POVs. Another really good benefit is foreshadowing elements is a lot easier. We talked earlier about Chekhov's gun. Something like that is way easier to set up early. Something like mysteries where you have red herrings and clues, and so many Chekhov gun moments thrive in an outlining environment. So much so that Agatha Christie talks about how she had books and books and books of journals just filled with every single note and clue and possible killer and possible permutations of plots before she even got it started, because it really, really works with these foreshadowing elements. Those moments can be so clean because you know where you're going. Now, neither of these ways of writing are perfect by any means. Both of them have really big cons that's important to realize as a writer. If you are one of these types, you need to keep in mind that these are possible shortcomings that your style of creating stories can make. Now, that's not a bad thing. It just means you have to be extra careful looking out for those things. For example, what are the cons for gardeners?
You mentioned Agatha Christie. Doing mysteries thrillers, just imagining doing that as a gardener sounds very, very difficult and taxing, just in terms of doing the rewrites. And that kind of bleeds into the major con is something that I call dead ends. Some plots that you want to discover and you think are really cool, they may actually end up going nowhere. So you actually end up doing a lot of hard thinking about what do I need to do with this, and then you end up cutting it. One way I've tried to save myself some time is I end up doing almost these writes in my head, and I think through the plots without really writing them, so I don't work through the scene necessarily. If it sounds good in my head, I will then try it out. And then sometimes it really doesn't, so I just won't pursue that anymore in my head, and I'll wait until I sit down and start writing and just know that that way did not work. Another con is you sputter out. You're going and you're going and going, but then you kind of hit a wall and you're just confused. You're like, okay, where do I go now? I have all these different things I could play with, but I'm not really sure how they connect anymore. So you can almost lose your way, and then you lose the tempo, and then you just don't really want to write because you don't know where to go. Number 3 is pacing issues. You found where you needed to go. You essentially have discovered it and you've made it, but it turns out you really could have gotten to that point from your halfway point to your 3/4 point a lot sooner. Sometimes that happens and you have to then go do a rewrite, or you have to just do a heavy editing session. The 4th thing is complex plots become very difficult. I have all these awesome ideas and I want them to all come to fruition. I want them to all interconnect, and I can't. Sometimes it's just so hard. I just don't know what to do with them. And I get frustrated because on one hand, I wouldn't have come up with them without discovery writing, but on the other, I sometimes don't know how to connect them. Because I didn't really plot them through all the way. The last thing, sequels become very difficult. You ask yourself, how do I end this? I have all these ideas, like I said, you have all these ideas coming out. You feel like you could just go and go and go. But at some point you do need to have a finality. I think we've seen this in the real world with Rothfuss and Martin, 2 very famous fantasy authors who famously also don't have endings to their series. I think that is a bit of a product of discovery writing. Those are unfortunate. They're real issues with the Gardner type. So Jesse, tell us a bit about the architect cons and what people should look out for.
The outlining cons are in a lot of ways a mirror of what gardeners are really good at doing. So for example, gardeners are really good at writing characters that feel like they're alive because they've come off the page. On the opposite side, outliners or architects are usually really bad at that. They typically make very wooden characters when they're not practiced and they don't know what to look out for. This is mostly because characters for outliners are fulfilling a need in the story rather than having their own volition. Another example of this are scenes in an outliner's story can be basically trying to get from point A to point B rather than being interesting in and of themselves. An example of this is someone like Dan Brown. I personally don't mind Dan Brown, but a lot of his scenes can feel like they are just there to fulfill a purpose, and then the main character is going to run to the next scene, basically. Your book is obviously a collection of scenes, and when those scenes are just to tell the reader this random information that they need for the rest of the plot, it becomes boring, and this is one of the downsides to outlining. Good writers can avoid that, but you have to be aware of those downsides. Another example is writing outlines for a lot of writers can kill the enjoyment. George R. R. Martin also talks about this, that when the outline is written, there's something psychologically that happens where you feel like the story is already told, and a lot of people just kind of lose their mojo. And all of these cons, I think if you're aware of them, you can use them to your advantage. And this is all for me to say, I think the best approach usually is to have some kind of hybrid approach. There's many different ways to do this. Some writers will write the last line of their story and then write backwards from there. Someone like Robert Jordan would do the points on the map method, which is basically you do the ends of chapters or the ends of big arcs and outline those moments and then allow yourself to discovery right in between those moments. So it allows you to have the benefit of having structure and a plan moving forward, but still have that spontaneity and that desire to continue writing that isn't completely killed by an outline. Someone like Brandon Sanderson, who's also a super strong outliner, also still discovery writes his characters to avoid having those wooden characters. Now, a downside is you sometimes have to rewrite your outlines to fix the way that your characters messed them up. These are the kinds of gives and takes that different writers have to do to make sure that they're making the best books that they can. Try not to think of this as so black and white as I am an outline writer or I am a discovery writer. Try both sides, see if one of them has something that can offer you, and use them to your benefit and write better stories.
Yeah, let us know if either of these have worked, if you've done a little bit of each, or if you're really going to just lean into one or the other. And also hit us up with any other authors that have spoken out about how they write, because we're always looking to learn more about writing styles and who's done it well and who hasn't. So that'll about do it for us. See ya.
Hey guys, if you really like this video, check the one down below. You might like that one too.
And if you really like what you see, click here to subscribe.